What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I am back with some more boxing. Today is Monday, and I got a lot of questions, so I'm getting right to it. Terence Crawford just fought this weekend. I got a lot of Terence Crawford questions, so I'm going to try to lump some of them together if I can and go through them. First question is from William Doc Wyatt. Boxing Ego. What do you think of Terence Crawford versus Adrien Broner fight, and who would you pick? And then someone else, Mr. DJ Who Knows, also pretty much asked the same question. What do you think of Crawford versus Broner at 140? Do you think it's a good fight? And do you see it happening this year? If it was to happen, who would you pick? So, I like the fight. I think it's an excellent fight. And there's a couple different reasons for it. And to answer the second part of Mr. DJ Who Knows question, I really don't see it happening based on boxing politics. I don't see it happening this year. Adrien Broner, if you look at his recent opponents, he hasn't really fought anybody since Maidana, like in terms of that upper echelon. And Crawford, I mean, this dude, his last four performances have been spectacular. And not even really just that, but based on the fact that Heyman's doing his own thing with NBC and CBS and Heyman Boxing, Premier Boxing Champs, all of that, Showtime. And Terence Crawford is with Top Rank, who primarily works with HBO. So based on boxing politics, I don't think it'll happen, but I would love if somehow they got it done and they used the Mayweather versus Pacquiao model of co-promoting or something and found a way to get it done. I like the fight. I would definitely favor Crawford. I just think his skill set, being ambidextrous, go from orthodox southpaw, is going to be too much for Broner. Broner, I haven't really been impressed with his power at 140 or 147, like at 130 or 135. I think his power, he could really make statements. So Crawford, I mean, it's a good fight. I would favor Crawford, but it's a good fight because sometimes when you get two black fighters in at the same time, it's kind of a battle for bragging rights sometimes, and not to stereotype, but a lot of black fighters fight with a certain rhythm. You know what I mean? Like some people were saying Floyd Mayweather was troubled by black fighters primarily, like Shane Mosley, Zab Judah, DeMarcus Corley, etc. Now, I'm not to say that's the only fighters that can trouble these guys. However, I don't know if it's just like a rivalry or whatever it is. Nobody wants to lose, but there's different, I guess, complications that you fight when you see two black fighters fight. I also think like Emmanuel Taylor. Just look at some classic fights. Tommy Hearns and Marvin Hagler. They gave each other the business, and Emmanuel Taylor, I'm not saying this is a classic, but Emmanuel Taylor, Broner was a competitive fight. So usually get some pretty good competitive fights when you have two guys who are at the closer to the elite level or whatever you want to call them, fighting each other that are young. You know what I'm saying? So I would like the fight. I would definitely favor Crawford, more versatile from what I've seen. And it looked like his power carried up, even though, in my opinion, DULORME is a bit chinny and fatigues in the second half. However, Broner has fought at 47 before, and he didn't get knocked out by Maidana, so it would be an interesting fight to see because Broner is athletic and he also carries speed versus, like, Crawford hasn't fought anyone, I guess, similar, semi-slick or athletic and speed since Gamboa, and that was at a lower division. So to see him fight at 140 versus Broner, it's a good fight. And the second part of Williams' question, do you think the reason Bob Arum let Floyd buy out his contract for $750K is because Floyd was black, meaning Arum probably thought Floyd would be a bad boxing statistic that never measured up to the Golden Boy? Bad mistake. What are your thoughts? Thanks for the great videos. I'm not going to say it's because he's black per se, but Bob Arum's been in the game since the Ali days, the 60s or whatever. So I think a lot of promoters, they do what they're supposed to do in terms of they have this mindset like this is a investment, so to speak. You know what I mean? I'm not saying they don't like the fighters at all, but to them, I think a lot of it is business. You know what I mean? They've seen, especially in boxing. Boxing, you see fighters come and go all the time, and I think the promoter attitude is kind of like there's plenty of fish in the sea. So Bob Arum, just like he let go of Chavez Jr. recently for a little bit over what Floyd Mayweather got bought out for. He got, I think, $1 million or a little bit over $1 million to release Chavez Jr. to Heyman Boxing, and you know what I mean? I think it's because Bob Arum's a promoter. He's like, damn, I can get 7 figures off of this, you know what I mean, off of releasing this dude. Oh, well, you know what I mean? I got young and up-and-coming people, Lomachenkos and Crawfords and guys like that. Plus, I get this nice sum of money for my company. So I think that's what it was because at the time, I don't remember exactly what fight Floyd left after, but I want to say Zab Judah might have been his last fight or close to his last fight. And if you watch that, Zab Judah was competitive with Floyd Mayweather early. So Bob Arum probably didn't know the gym that he had within Floyd Mayweather, because this is also pre De La Hoya. And after the De La Hoya fight, that's when Floyd really started to become the cash cow. So I think ultimately Bob Arum had no way of knowing what Floyd would become. Floyd like went from pretty boy to Money Mayweather, and that's when he became the highest paid athlete and started doing the best gates and the best pay-per-view buys and stuff like that. So at the time, Bob Arum seen Mayweather, he might have seen talent or whatever, but he was fighting competitive fights with Zab Judah and stuff like that, and he had no idea of what Floyd would become. So I'm not going to say it's because he's black. It's probably because he was expendable. He was like, oh, he's a fighter. Oh, well, fuck it. I'm getting almost $1 million to release him. He wants out. Fuck it. There's other people. And he didn't know how great Mayweather would become as far as business savvy, and then also being #1 on the pound for pound list. He wasn't that at the time he was released. He wasn't this cash cow. He wasn't #1 pound for pound earner, highest paid athlete. He wasn't none of that when Bob Arum let him go. And I'm sure he does regret it. Like you said, it was a huge mistake. Next question, Christopher Persad. After looking at the two fighters, what do you think of Crawford versus Matthysse? Personally, I think that style would match perfectly. Great show. Keep up the good work. Now, that's a fight I love also, because Matthysse, he shows he's not just a puncher. He's a boxer puncher. And I told you that going into the fight, I just thought he would get broken down via Ruslan, and he didn't. And that was a hard hitter. Ruslan looked very one-dimensional, but you have to credit Lucas Matthysse for that. He was jabbing. He was not laying on the ropes. He wasn't allowing Ruslan to really capitalize and win all those rounds. So that's credit to Lucas Matthysse being a good boxer puncher and being strong. I think he really battered Ruslan in the early rounds, which set the tone for, I mean, his face was all, it looked like he was wearing a mask after, you know what I mean, by the start of round 3. So credit to Matthysse. And then Crawford looked sensational against Thomas DULORME. He had the filler out rounds where he was still counter-punching, computing data, and as soon as he found an opening in the 6th round, he capitalized and he finished him. And I like Crawford because he's not only strategic, he can also fight orthodox southpaw and switch it up. So that shows a lot of tools and a high skill set. But he has kind of a killer instinct. He's not like just this. Some people say, oh, he's like Sweet Pea Whitaker. Yeah, but I think he has more power than Sweet Pea Whitaker. And there's no disrespect. Sweet Pea's one of my favorite. But Crawford, I think he's more aggressive and he has more power per his division than Sweet Pea Whitaker. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be a fun ride for Crawford. And Matthysse is also a veteran. He's been in there with Danny Garcia, Zab Judah, Devin Alexander, Humberto Soto, etc. So I really like that fight. And I like meaningful fights. That's a meaningful fight at 140. And the winner hopefully could face like a Danny Garcia or Lamont Peterson or whatever, something like that. I would say Danny Garcia just because he was awarded the win in the Peterson fight and he still has his belts. So that would be a rematch for Matthysse if he beats Crawford, or Danny Garcia, that would be a rematch from the amateurs. So I love that fight, and you're right, it's a good style matchup. So next question is from Luis Vargas. Did DULORME's decision to switch to a different coach hurt him at all, you think? Okay, now this is similar, so I'm going to kill two birds with one stone. Ali Dago 619 said, do you think Chris Algieri can become a better fighter now that he has John David Jackson as his new trainer? Now, you guys kind of asked similar things, so I think I can knock it all out at once. DULORME, I think he was going to lose regardless. I think Crawford is just that dude. He's very skilled, very talented at what he does. So him leaving Robert Garcia, that's not going to change a fighter. And I'm not big on like fighters taking an L and then they, oh, I got to switch trainers. Victor Ortiz, I'm with Joel Diaz. Amir Khan left Freddie Roach. Now, if you feel the need to do it, do it. I'll never hold anyone back. If you think it's better for your career or you're not learning anything and you think you need some fresh air or change, cool. But I think a lot of people go in thinking that they're going to be molded instantly. And it just doesn't work like that, in my opinion. I think it's like going to the gym. Let's say you're 50 pounds overweight and you're not morbidly obese. Like, because the reason I say morbidly obese, if you are morbidly obese, you could lose like big poundage easy. You know what I'm saying? Just by working out. But let's say you're out of shape or whatever. You go to the gym. You're not going to see results. If you have a beer belly, you're not going to just instantly relieve or reduce your beer belly to the point where it's highly noticeable in 2 gym sessions. It doesn't work like that. Same thing with boxing and trainers. It's not an instant process. Now, for DULORME, again, I think his problem has always been he's a sharp boxer, he's fast, he's athletic, but I've seen guys that rough him up and shake him up, and it looks like he loses confidence. You've seen that in the Bregu fight. Also, he fades in the second half. You've seen that in the Lundy fight, and the Bregu fight, and in the Crawford fight. And then also, I think he's very chinny. I don't think he has a strong chin. So all of those things, whether Robert Garcia was in his corner or not, I don't think that would have changed it. Robert Garcia can't get in the ring and fight for him. So if he got caught, the fact is he got caught hurt in round 6 by Terence Crawford and didn't even make it out of the round. So what could Robert Garcia have done different than whoever his coach was for this fight? Nothing. I mean, he got stopped in round. It's not like he made it out of the 6th and then got stopped in the 7th. He got stopped in the round. So I mean, despite having Robert Garcia, and he was winning the fight, you know what I'm saying? So it's not like Robert Garcia would have had this like, hey, make sure you watch out because you're going to get clipped in the 6th round. So Garcia, I mean, DULORME was up in the fight. He was winning the fight. It wasn't like it was a landslide or one-sided or anything, but he was still winning. So, I mean, if you had Robert Garcia, Freddie Roach, Floyd Sr., it doesn't really matter. I think he was bound to lose because Crawford is more skilled. And then same thing with Chris Algieri. John David Jackson, I think John David Jackson definitely is a better trainer than Tim Lane, just because Tim Lane, I believe, he's like a karate instructor or something. John David Jackson is a former boxer, and he's a boxing trainer of one of the deadliest guys at light heavy, Sergey Kovalev. So I think John David Jackson is a better boxing trainer for sure. But again, these changes and improvements aren't going to happen instantaneous. Fact of the matter is, I would never put Chris Algieri and pick him and tab him to beat Amir Khan, because there's something that no trainer can duplicate for the fighter, and that's experience. Amir Khan is an Olympic silver medalist, and he has pro-level experience with good names like Marco Antonio Barrera, Danny Garcia, Lamont Peterson. You know what I'm saying? And any way you slice it, he just has way more amateur and pro-level experience at boxing. So I don't think there's anything that John David Jackson can teach him that will prepare him to beat a guy like Amir Khan, who really has most advantage, I would say, in the power department, the speed department, the experience department. And John David Jackson is fighting, or him and Chris Algieri, the fight with Khan, I believe, is May 24th. So what can he learn in that amount of time that will pull the upset? I really don't see it. If anything, maybe if John David Jackson got Chris Algieri earlier when he first got into boxing, or something like that, and started earlier. But it is really hard in boxing for the late bloomers, because you have to put into perspective the experience. You got guys like De La Hoya, Mayweather on the 96 Olympic team. De La Hoya went to the Olympics. Rigondeaux, Cuban School of Boxing. These guys were boxing since they were young, since they were little. So to be a late bloomer and really get into the world of the sweet science at age 24 or whatever age is extremely hard, because now you're going up at the elite level. It's hard because you're going up against guys who have been doing this their whole life, and it's just hard. And so I don't think John David Jackson is going to do anything. Like I said, if he got him earlier, maybe, but he just doesn't have enough time to fully change and I don't know, revamp Chris Algieri. He's a kickboxer turned boxer. He's off of a loss. So I think he could be a better fighter over time, but going in against a big name like Amir Khan, I wouldn't pick him to win, because he just doesn't have enough time to improve. A training camp on average is about 6 to 8 weeks, and it's very hard to learn new things. A lot of fighters, in fact, is like you can't teach a dog new tricks. They're set in their old ways and all the bad habits they picked up for years of doing it. How can you reverse that in 6 to 8 weeks? You know what I'm saying? Think about, like, let's say you've been smoking cigarettes since you're 14 and now you're 32. You've had a cigarette every single day from 14 to 32. Now you want to get off of it. It's not impossible, but a lot of people can't cold turkey, and it takes time, and you have to get nicotine patches and all kinds of stuff. And I don't even smoke, but I know people that smoke. I've never smoked cigarettes, but that's just me. But anyway, it takes time to like wean yourself off of those things. So same thing with changes with trainers. So I'm not big on when people switch trainers thinking that they're going to be this marvelous fighter. It just doesn't work like that, in my opinion. Next question, Robert Bauman. In your opinion, win, lose, or draw, should Khan drop a few spots in the top 10 rankings due to his choice in Algieri? Um, Khan's still a good fighter. He still has a good resume. I'm not going to say he drops a few spots because in order for him to drop, other people have to be doing something more spectacular. Now, the thing is, on the flip side of that, it doesn't get him anywhere. Like, it doesn't, he's not going to go up. Same thing, Kell Brook, Frankie Gavin. I'm not going to be like, oh, Kell Brook definitely beats Mayweather Pacquiao winner because he beat Frankie Gavin. So, in my opinion, it's more neutral. He stays the same. He doesn't move up a slot. Beating Devin Alexander, when he did that, to me, he moved up a slot because Devin Alexander had a good resume and it was considered to be a 50-50 fight. But beating Chris Algieri off a loss, lower weight division, it doesn't drop him per se. Like, but it just keeps him neutral. He's not going to move up, in my opinion. I'm not going to be like, he definitely could beat Mayweather Pacquiao because Khan beat Algieri. Yeah, like that just doesn't make sense. To move up in rankings, you have to do something, in my opinion. Keith Thurman beating Robert Guerrero, yeah, I moved him up. They said he ain't fought nobody, and that was his step up, and he dominated his step up, even got a knockdown against a tough granite chin guy like Guerrero that's been in there with Mayweather. So that moves him up. When Rigondeaux beat Nonito Donaire, that moved him up. When Lomachenko beat Gary Russell Jr., that moved him up. These are all fights that, to me, move you up in ranking because you're doing what's unthinkable or very close odds or whatever. So he's not going to move. He's not going to move up or down. He just stays the same as far as I'm concerned. Next question. Naima Itsam. Hey, Ego, do you think Khan has the power to stop someone like Kell Brook if they fought in the near future? I personally don't. I think Khan can win that fight. It's a winnable fight for Kell Brook or Amir Khan. The way I see it is if Amir Khan were to win, I think he would win by outboxing, just beating Kell Brook to the punch and more or less outboxing him over the course of 12 rounds. And if Kell Brook were to win, he might have a chance to outbox Khan, but I would more so say it would be because of a stoppage. So that's kind of how I see that fight breaking down, depending on if Khan were to win or Kell Brook. I don't think Khan has the power to stop Kell Brook. I haven't seen anything that in Kell Brook that would make me think that he's, you know what I mean, he has less of a chin than Devin Alexander or anybody else that hasn't been stopped by Khan, Danny Garcia or whatever. I think Kell Brook's pretty strong. He's in shape. That also helps. You can't buy a chin. You can't, like, it's whatever chin you were God-given, that's the chin you have. But I really haven't seen anything within Kell Brook that makes me think Khan would stop him. Again, Khan can win, but I would say more or less by outboxing him and just the experience and beating him to the punch. And if Kell Brook were to win, I would say probably by some kind of stoppage. So it's a good fight. That's why people want to see a 50-50 fight. But truthfully, I think Amir Khan's power is overstated. If you look at Amir Khan's whole career, he has 1 KO. And I'm not talking about TKO because there's a difference between a KO and a TKO. Not everyone really analyzes this. But a KO is you're out cold. Like, wow, I'm out. Sleep. Like, you know what I mean? That's a KO. A TKO is still good, you know what I mean? You're still stopping your opponent, but it's like you're wearing them down, breaking them down, and they can't continue kind of thing. So it's a difference. Even if you look at guys who are considered feather-fisted or light punchers, Timothy Bradley and Paulie Malignaggi, when they're facing bums early on in their career to build them up, they had KOs, like absolute KOs, like no TKO. They had actual KOs. But if you look at Amir Khan's whole resume, he has 1 KO, and that was to Zab Judah. And Zab Judah just kind of mentally folded to me. He just didn't get up and beat the count. Therefore, it was a KO. It wasn't like Zab Judah was knocked out cold. So Khan has respectable power. Like, you're not going to chump him and just expect to walk through all of his shots. He can still knock you down. He can still hurt you. But actual KO, like stop me power, I think Khan, if anything, he's more of an attrition, break you down, break your spirits down. You're angry because you couldn't get, because literally Luis Collazo and Devin Alexander were getting blasted by Khan primarily 12 rounds, all the rounds. But Collazo got knocked down 3 times. Devin Alexander was walking through his shots and he was just getting beat to the punch, but he still kept coming. Versus when he fought Sean Porter, he actually got knocked down versus Porter. You know what I'm saying? So it's different. I don't think Khan has like really the power. Who's he stopped lately? You know what I mean? Carlos Molina, a guy who was coming up in weight. So I wouldn't say he can stop Kell Brook. I would say it'd be outboxing him, if anything. Next question is from IROH. Do you think the fact that Danny Garcia's titles weren't on the line contributed to his lack of performance against Peterson? Where does Peterson go from here since the IBF strap will no longer be his? And I don't think Danny Garcia lost because of his title wasn't on the line due to a catchweight. And he's in the wrong sport if that's the reason he lost, because he wasn't motivated. I ultimately think Lamont Peterson just had a great game plan. He lulled him to sleep and didn't show his good shit until halfway through the fight. And by then, Garcia was already tired from chasing trying to chase Lamont Peterson and corner him to land off shots, and he was fatiguing. And then that's when Peterson showed how good of shape he was in and the rest of his game plan, like the phase 2 of his game plan. So I don't think it had anything to do with him knowing there wasn't titles, because I don't think fighters should be fighting for titles per se. Like, that's the only reason. That's like fighting for a paycheck. Like, even though Mayweather says that shit, like, oh, I'm a prize fighter, dummy. Of course he wants to get paid for it, but he's fighting for more than that. Don't let that fool you. And I don't think fighters should fight for the incentive. Like, you have to want to be a fighter. You have to want to get in the ring and take punches and stuff like that. So I don't think the title influences his shitty performance. And then part B of your question, where does Peterson go from here without the IBF strap? I don't think that matters, because real recognizes real, and a lot of people picked Lamont Peterson as the winner in that fight, so his stock doesn't really drop. You could tell me all day that Danny Garcia beat Mauricio Herrera or Herrera lost to Jose Benavidez, but I don't agree with that. I think Herrera beat both of them. So his stock doesn't really drop, because despite what the record says, people know what happened, and it was a great performance by Lamont Peterson, without a doubt. So I don't think his stock drops. And then you can look into that a little bit deeper. Technically, Lamont Peterson shouldn't even have been the IBF strap holder anyway, because he fought Amir Khan, and that was a controversial fight where a lot of people thought Khan should have won, and there was the 2-point deduction in DC where Peterson's from, so people thought that was some hometown cooking. And after that, he tested positive for high levels of testosterone, so he technically should have, between those two things, should have lost his belt at that point. Like, oh, he tested positive, maybe there should be a no contest now, and we'll take the strap. And then beyond that, Lamont Peterson fought Lucas Matthysse, and then they added an extra pound, making it a fight at a catchweight. And he got stopped by Matthysse in the 3rd round, and he kept his title because the fight was at a catchweight, because that's what they negotiated. So, I mean, Lamont Peterson pretty much has been overdue of not having that IBF strap. So I don't think his stock goes down, and technically he shouldn't have had the IBF strap this long anyway, based on the examples that I just gave. So he could still get big fights based on his performance, because he looked good. Next question, Bound 123. What 3 changes would you love to see in boxing? I'm referring to literally any aspect of the sport and business. Personally, I would love to see a limit on how much weight a fighter can put on between weigh-in to fight night. Love from UK. P.S. Not a question, but a request. You got to do more impersonations, man. Your Prince Nas one killed me. More impersonations definitely coming. Shout out to the whole UK. And I agree. That's one of mine. I think the fighters nowadays don't even fight remotely. That's why Peter Quillins and all these guys have trouble missing weight. You got Chavez Jr., Canelo making up their own weights for multiple fights, just different stuff like that. The weight thing is getting out of hand. Like, they used to do same day weigh-ins and stuff, and I wish they got back to some kind of monitoring system, because you got a lot of guys like Chavez Jr. Look at it like this. Chavez Jr., when he was fighting smaller guys, being a guy who naturally probably could fight at cruiserweight, you know what I mean, because he was like huge. When he was crunching his body down and forcing himself to fight at 160, he was looking better. And then he fought a guy who was closer in his rehydration size, and he looked horrible. So I think to make it a little bit more fair, you got Maidana outweighing Floyd and Canelo outweighing Floyd 12, 15 pounds, and people outweighing Pacquiao. Like, it's crazy. So I want to see some kind of like limitation on how much you could rehydrate, like, or like somehow force these guys to move up. Like Canelo, if you can't make 154, the regular 154, shit, move up to 160. There's great fights up there for you. Quillin, there's David Lemieux, there's Triple G. You know what I'm saying? So I wish there was some kind of better way to monitor what, like, if you can make the weight, you can make the weight. I mean, I guess you can't really say anything, but if they did the same day weigh-ins and you can still make the weight and everything, then cool. Number two, I would say the fans, honestly. I think nowadays you got a lot of fans with the social age, and they don't really study up. They don't know the game. They don't watch several fights, but they're always the most opinionated. So I really want people to respect the sport of boxing and just do your research. Just know what you're talking about. Know who's what and who did what and different things, and be more realistic. You got a lot of fans that go off the deep end in terms of their opinions, and like they like a fighter, so they'll heavily discredit another fighter. Like it's cool to have a little bit of rivalry and a little bit of fun with it, but some people take it overboard and they don't really know much about the sport. And then the other thing is like just certain fights, it'll be a great round 5 and 6 full of action, and then let's say both fighters are tired, and then round 7 is not as action packed, and then fighters or the fans start booing. I think all that's like there's no class in that. You know what I mean? These guys are risking their lives whether you think so or not. So because like I think in the Thurman Guerrero fight, they had a great round, and then the next round people were booing. Like that's not the type of fight you would boo. You know what I'm saying? They were both. Thurman had a knot on his head. Guerrero was getting slugged, but still coming and still trying. Like why are you guys booing fighters like that? Like I understand if it was just like a boring ass fight, but I mean we just had a great round and you're gonna boo them. So I think I think a lot of fans could go. It makes boxing interesting, but I just want more knowledgeable fans. And then the last thing, number 3, what would I change in the sport of boxing? Probably judging. I mean, some kind of way to get some scorecards, like, or if people turn in these bullshit scorecards, you have to make them explain it to the public or something. I want to know why you scored Mayweather Canelo 114 to 114. Why did you pick Bradley over Pacquiao in the first fight? These are questions that need explanations. How was Canelo lower 117 to 111? I think it's corrupt. You know what I mean? Like people have these, it just doesn't even make, there's no rhyme or reason. There's just these wide scorecards for no reason. Like how on earth could you have scored it that wide? You know what I'm saying? In a close competitive fight. So it's like, I understand there's different ways to score, but some people take that to the next level and the scorecards are all over the place. Like it'll be a competitive fight and they'll have one fighter winning every round except for one. That's just not realistic to me. And the final question, Luis Lepi, what boxer do you think is more feared, Mayweather or Pacquiao? I really don't think either are feared per se, because people realize, these young up and comers and people who want to fight or in their divisions, they realize that I get an opportunity, and win, lose, or draw, I'm getting the biggest payday of my life. So I don't think either one at this point of their career is feared. A lot of people, I think, underestimate Mayweather and Pacquiao, feeling like, oh, Pacquiao's small, he's, you know what I mean, over the hill, or Mayweather, he doesn't throw enough punches and stuff, and they think it's going to be an easy time with either guy, and then they get in the ring and get schooled or like lose, get beat up on or whatever. So they get a rude awakening. But I don't think either is feared per se. Like when I think of fear, I think of like a Keith Thurman or something, or Triple G. Like those guys are more high risk, low reward. Triple G is not no blockbuster. He's building his brand and his fan base, but he's not like just the day tickets go on sale, he's selling out the Forum or anything like that. Keith Thurman, same thing. So I think those guys are probably more feared because there's no big paycheck attached to them. There's no like, you might not get your career high payday for fighting those guys. You know what I mean? Versus Mayweather, Pacquiao, people don't fear him because they're like, oh, they're older. They think they can beat him. It's just the fact that a lot of people get in the ring and then they find out they can't. Brandon Rios probably thought he could beat Pacquiao, but he couldn't when it came down to it. So I wouldn't say either are feared. If I had to pick someone, I would say Pacquiao, maybe, based on him being a southpaw. People have trouble with southpaws, and his style is more aggressive, more offensive, and it looks more, I guess you could say, dazzling. Like, oh shit, he just hit him with the 4-punch combination. So if I had to pick someone, to be Pacquiao, but truthfully, I don't think either one of them is feared because of what comes with it. It's an opportunity, and it's a huge paycheck, career paycheck for fighting him. So people generally are actually in line calling these guys out and wanting to fight these guys more so. I've heard Broner call out Pacquiao. I've heard Keith Thurman call out both of them. I've heard KELL Brook say he wants the winner. So I don't think they're quote unquote feared, either of them. that pretty much wraps up. Let me know how you think I did Monday Mail Day. There was a couple questions I was going to answer, but I don't want this to tail off too long. So ask again next week. I'll try to get to some more questions. I feel like I had a good amount of questions this week. Drop me a comment. Let me know how you think I did. Make sure you like my video as always. Hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video, it's Ego signing off.